Can I request everybody to take their seat? We are about to start. We are about to start. Please take your seat. Khofone, can you request people outside to come in, please? Thank you. You may continue a little bit. Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We are about to start, and I'm going to invite Prof. Falola and Prof. Hopton Dan to take their seat next to Prof. Tumi. Prof. Falola.
manage.
Greetings once again, ladies and gentlemen. Can we please give a huge round of applause for our amazing band? Their music has really created a wonderful vibe and set a tone in a way for this afternoon. A very warm welcome to each and every one of us here, and welcome to our extraordinary dual event, which is a public lecture and the launch of a new center for teaching excellence and curricular engagement. My name is Gilbert Musatebe, and I'm attached to ILMA, which I think by now needs no introduction, within our mighty faculty of humanities, and I will be directing this program this afternoon. It is truly an honor, ladies and gentlemen, to be here. We have a fully packed program with very exciting items featuring not one but two public lectures by our esteemed scholars who will be introduced at the appropriate time, Prof. Toyen Falola and Prof. Hopton Dunn. But I must also, before we go any further, acknowledge our esteemed guests, starting with our invited guests, Prof. Toyen Falola, that we all know, who is a distinguished scholar at the University of Texas, Austin in the USA. A big round of applause for Prof. Falola. And Prof. Hopton Dunn, an expert in media and digital policy at the University of Botswana. A big round of applause for Prof. Dunn. You are welcome. These are our two academic giants that we will be listening to this afternoon. Moving now to the home front, I want to recognize our Executive Dean, Professor Dumisani Muyo, our Executive Dean in the Faculty of Humanity. You are welcome, Prof. I also want to recognize Prof. Merna Nel, our Deputy Dean of Research in the Faculty. Prof. Nel, you are welcome. Herculean Kose, who is our Deputy Dean of Community Engagement. You are welcome also, Prof. And of course, not forgetting Prof. Abiodun Salau, the Director of ILMA. You are also welcome, Prof. Abiodun. We also recognize Prof. Itumele Musinyani from the Faculty of Law. Prof. Musinyani, where are you seated? Okay, there is our dear Prof. And also Prof. Christian John Makala, all the way from Botswana, from the University of Botswana. Prof. Makala, you are welcome, sir. We also recognize the presence of Dr. Mwatudi Dilotsotle, the Provincial Executive Representative, and also the representative of the Ruth Mumpati Foundation, and also a former premier, Dr. Dilotsotle. I also want to recognize the presence of Mayor Teresa Makaka as well as Mayor Tandi Ketse from LEPECO, a peace organization called LEPECO. You are welcome, colleagues. Now, ladies and gentlemen, at this moment, I want to invite our Executive Dean, Prof. Dumisani Muyo, to come and convey welcome remarks, opening and welcome remarks. Prof. Muyo, The stage is yours. Thank you.
A good afternoon to you all, and thank you so much, Prof. Gilbert, for those words of introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to start by recognizing our leadership in the university. Most importantly, our Deputy Vice Chancellor, who is responsible for the Mahikeng campus, who could not be here, unfortunately, because of to be here. I also want to recognize Professor Linda Duplessis, our Deputy Vice Chancellor for Teaching and Learning. She would have also wanted to be here, but had other commitments. Then I also want to recognize colleagues from the Center for Teaching and Learning who were also invited to be part of this, but could not because they were on a breakaway that ran concurrently with this session. I want to acknowledge the presence of the deanery from the Faculty of Humanities. So colleagues, most welcome, and I thank you for the support for coming to witness this important occasion. I also want to particularly thank Professor Chaka for his thought leadership and making sure that we get to where we are today with the launch of this center. I know it has been quite a long and tedious, sometimes tiresome journey, but you stood the ground and we are here today. So thank you, and all the colleagues that were involved in working with Prof. Chaka on the center. I also recognize directors, school directors, research directors from the faculty who are here, and also other faculties. I see Professor Hove from Education. Welcome. So first, of course, and I also want to recognize all the dignitaries that have been mentioned from Botswana, from the provincial government. Welcome as well. I would like to first welcome and thank our two keynote speakers, Professor Hopton Dunn from the University of Botswana and Professor Toyin Falola from University of Texas at Austin. It's not usual, colleagues, that we have the kind of stars that we have today in terms of the intellectual capital, the leadership that they have in the two key disciplines, namely history and media and communication. So we really welcome you. I want to particularly welcome Professor Toyin Falola, who is going to be receiving an honorary doctorate tomorrow from our distinguished institution. Prof. Falola, we really are most grateful that you were generous enough to accept our offer, our offer of a doctorate. And I know that Professor Falola has been very closely connected, not just with the Faculty of Humanities, but especially with this campus, the Mahikeng campus. And he has stimulated quite a lot of intellectual and academic discourse within our campus, which is highly commendable. Professor Dan, also a leading media scholar who has also done quite a lot in terms of leading in that field at the highest level, at some point being the president of the International Association for Media and Communication Research. So, looking at the titles for the presentations this afternoon, I realized that they underscore the fact that in our time, change is the only constant. And with rapid technological change especially, we notice that our ways of doing things, or our traditional ways of doing things, have been upended. And that means we cannot keep doing things as busy. For excellence in teaching and learning becomes even more challenging in these changing times because, as you know, with AI and digital disruptions, the whole issue around academic integrity becomes critical. but the questions around to what extent we embrace these new changes and what we do with those changes in our teaching and learning, in our research, become quite critical. So digital disruption, colleagues, means that our teaching approaches need to be equally disrupted. It cannot be business as usual. In fact, I think we should adopt the motto that is used by some in Silicon Valley, which says, if it's not broken, break it. This is contrary to the usual saying which we know, which says, don't fix it if it's not broken. So that mindset is important to the changing times. But the question perhaps might be, why such a center? Why do we want to have a center for teaching excellence in the Faculty of Humanities, and why now? I know Prof. Chaka is going to address that in more detail, but I think it is a platform that will enable us to reflect a lot more on our pedagogy in the humanities and to address critical questions about our approaches to teaching in a changing world. There are quite a number of fundamental questions in teaching and learning that arise in today's world. We hear a lot about workload, about burnout, both from staff and students. And it brings up the question of whether or not we are over-teaching or we are over-assessing. And the question around what is enough teaching, what is enough assessment. Those are things that I think this center can be seized with. Implications for workload, staff and student burnout, issues about academic integrity, and promoting ways in which we can ensure that our students are actually learning, such as introducing project-based learning that we are already doing in some of our programs. So working with the Center for Teaching and Learning, this center will seek to promote excellence in innovative teaching and learning, age approaches, promoting peer sharing of best practices in course design, in online and hybrid teaching. It will also convene workshops and seminars, provide thought leadership on teaching and learning matters, and more importantly, assisting the faculty in moving away from just talking about some of these changes, like AI, to begin using it in ethical and beneficial ways for both our staff and students. So it means we have to start thinking about a number of things, including what we mean by critical thinking, which the humanities are known for, communication skills, empathy. What exactly can we do? So this center will be seized with some of these big questions. So I just want to read out this quote from a recent study that was done in the UK, which I think is quite important for us and everyone in higher education. It's a research done by the Higher Education Policy Institute, and the lead author is Josh Freeman, and here's what he has to say. If students are equipped to use productively, but also intelligently, critically, and with full understanding of the limits of those tools and where they are useful and where they are not, they will be much more productive. If students don't, they will have a disadvantage. So you see that we need to be quite careful and intentional about how we are going to approach the whole question of AI. In this particular study that I'm referring to, it shows that 92% of students in the UK, from a study that was done in 2024, are already using generative AI in one form or another. In our context, I think the numbers are not far from that. Most of our students are using generative AI in a number of ways, for instance, summarizing articles, suggesting research ideas, and other things. So we just need to think more carefully about that. But colleagues, this is not supposed to be my platform as such. I'm here to just welcome you and open this important dialogue. But before I close, before I sit down, I want to thank everyone who was involved in the logistics of putting this event together, especially Granny from Prof. Chaka's office and anyone else who was involved. And I want to wish you all a fruitful engagement this afternoon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof. Dumi, for those opening remarks. As you heard Prof. Dumi, if it's not broken, break it. So that's the way to go. Ladies and gentlemen, I must tell you that this event has been organized by the Office of the Deputy Dean Teaching and Learning under the stewardship of Prof. Mpho Chaka. And I now take this opportunity to invite Prof. Chaka to come to the podium to give us an overview of the event. Prof. Chaka, over to you, sir.
Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I wanted to say we rushed to the shortcut and say all protocol observed, but I think I will not get dinner if I do that. So let me do it thoroughly. To say, Prof. Gilbert, thank you so much for directing the program for this particular event, and Faculty of Humanities, all our deputy deans seated on my right-hand side, Prof. Nell, and those who are connected elsewhere. I see Prof. Lee is here, deputy directors, research directors who are also part of this, colleagues in the different faculties, you are also acknowledged. Our students, I believe some of them are connected online. Esteemed guest, particularly our honored guest, Prof. Toyin Falola and Prof. Hopton Dunn. Good afternoon. Dear colleagues and honored guest, I believe that the work that has been done, seminal work that has been done by the two colleagues here, Prof. Falola and Hopton Dunn, has given me a base for the center, and I'll tell you why. I forgot to acknowledge Iggy, who's here. Iggy, you are acknowledged as well. You are acknowledged. I know you don't sit around, so please don't sit around like you normally do. I know you don't sit around. You have all the energy to fill the room. So as I was saying, the Prof. Toyin Falola and Prof. Dunn's, whose groundbreaking work has shaped the very ideals of what we're celebrating here today. And I'll tell you why. As the sun reaches its zenith, a time of clarity and illumination, we gather to launch the Center for Teaching Excellence and Curricular Engagement that embodies the Northwest University's commitment to creating a sustaining culture of excellence. Today, the Faculty of Humanities takes a bold step towards realizing this vision with the center, a base where pedagogy meets purpose, where we will ensure that Northwest University values of innovation, social justice, and Ubuntu will animate every classroom. We are here not just to launch a center, but to ignite a revolution in teaching and learning in the Faculty of Humanities. we have two powerhouses, as you have already seen, who will give us a beautiful presentation. But this center itself is our commitment to education that disrupts, connects, and transforms how we teach, what we assess, how we assess. And let me tell you more. Say, who teaches as well. There was no better thought leader to guide us in this process than Professor Dan and Professor Falula, whose scholarship answers the defining question, which is, how do we prepare minds for a world in flux? These two intellectual seminal works emphasizes the transformative potential of intellectuals and the importance of foresight in shaping society's future, which aligns with the idea of preparing minds for change and uncertainty. Why their work is a blueprint. Number one, teaching as an act of liberation. Some of the work, Prof. Falula, I had to do a bit of research for both of you on what you've done. It's not an easy task to go through just even 5 of the books that Prof. Falula wrote out of the 250 or more. But I have captured a few aspects. His clarion call to teach Africa is to engage in an act of intellectual decolonization that reminds us all transformative pedagogy must challenge power structures. In Decolonizing African Studies 2022, he writes, the classroom must be a space where students don't just inherit knowledge, reimagine its future. How does that align to Northwest University's strategic pillars? The Center for Teaching Excellence and Curricular Engagement is not an isolated initiative. It is the academic heartbeat of Northwest University. Let me tell you why. Teaching and learning strategy, which we call says student-centered pedagogy that fosters critical citizenship. It also looks at digital-enabled teaching responsiveness in terms of the 4IR. And I want to add 5IR as well. Curriculum renewal, which is grounded in African relevance and global dialogue. The center's first mandate will empower educators, all the lecturers, to teach fearlessly through decolonial syllabi, digital repositories of marginalized voices, and pedagogies that turn critique into social change. This afternoon we declare that humanities will lead this change. How is that going to be done? By embracing what our teaching and learning plans terms scholarship with societal impact, just as our powerhouse, whom are going to speak to you, progressive ideas will tell you. But Prof. Falula's work on decolonial epistemologies aligns with our mandate to decolonize and diversify knowledge, while Prof. Dan's digital equity advocacy mirrors Northwest University's pledge to bridge technological divides through inclusive education. Number 2, curriculum as a bridge to the future. Their pioneering work, but particularly Prof. Dan's pioneering work in media and communication and digital equity from his leadership in terms of policy advocacy, teaches us that education must dissolve boundaries between disciplines, between experts and communities, and between the analog and the digital worlds. His research on technology and social justice exemplifies how curricula can prepare students to navigate and reshape the digital age. I was really impressed this afternoon when Prof. Falola was already telling Prof. Dan that he has 63 pages that he's going to share with him on exactly that. What was that term again, Prof. Falola? Digital imperialism. And data colonialism. It was a new term to me, so thank you. I'm going to spend a couple of hours researching on that tonight. In our second pledge, we will design boundaryless learning where humanity is engaged with AI ethics, storytelling, and global media literacy, ensuring that no graduate is left behind. 3, engagement as a scholarship with teeth. Both scholars embody the ethos that knowledge must serve society. And Falola's Public Humanities Project and Dan's policy work in the Caribbean digital transformation proves that the academy walls must be porous, or its work becomes irrelevant. So we then have to have commitments to this. We need to advance excellence with care. Through various programs, pedagogical activities, to operationalize what Northwest University believes that great teaching is both rigorous and compassionate. We also need to champion curriculum for justice. Our decolonial inclusive curriculum will embody that. Commitment to social justice, ensuring that no voice is marginalized because Falola teaches us a syllabus is a political document. We need to build communities of excellence acting in Ubuntu. From students, staff, reading circles to Public Humanities Project will enact this in terms of collaborative knowledge building. As Dan reminds us, technology must serve humanities and not isolate it. Our third promise, and I'm almost done, the center will be a catalyst for action through co-designed courses, workshops, training, student-led teaching experience labs. How many of us remember this when we are engaged on paperwork? We forget the student voice and their experiences that should shape our curricula, how we teach, how we assess, why we assess, and what we teach. The poetic resonance in launching this center this afternoon becomes a time of reflection on the day's labor and preparation for the evening's rest. So too, we must reflect critically on the past pedagogies as individuals seated here or elsewhere to ensure that Northwest University culture of review demands of us. Prepare boldly for tomorrow's challenges and the uncertainties that we all know about. We teach students critical thinking, but do we want them to be critical of us? How do we ensure that our graduates with humanity and Northwest University light? So this is a future that we need to make together to our faculty, let us channel what Falola calls courage to reclaim African epistemic tradition and relevance, while says a lot. To our students, demand learning that matches the urgency of your generation. As Dan asserts, and disinformation, critical thinking isn't just a skill, but a survival tool. Ladies and gentlemen, in closing, we need to teach with excellence, as NWU expects us to do, to innovate with the courage, with the Ubuntu in our world needs. Thank you, and let us now turn the wisdom of our way forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. Chaka. Thank you very much for that insightful overview. That was, a mouthful. Thank you so much for that. I think I must ask our IT to please attend to this to ensure that we are able to follow what the speakers are saying. But you reminded us, Prof. Chaka, and you made a number of promises that are salient in the new curricular engagement that is going to be launched this afternoon, one of which is that student voice will be brought to the center to shape the curricula, which is quite good because teaching, is actually our core business. So I was very pleased about that, and the idea of the borderless curriculum, also exciting because this is the direction that the world is taking. And when you said that we will now need to, embark on a scholarship with teeth, the impactful scholarship that we need to change the circumstances in order to respond to both our immediate environment, to ensure that the kind of students that we produce are not just ambivalent citizens of the world. Also, ladies and gentlemen, before I go any further, I must tell you that there is a slight change in the program. We initially wanted to start with Prof. Toyin Falola, but since Prof. Hopton Dun's presentation is already ready, we are now going to start with Prof. Dunn, which means now that Prof. Falola will follow after Prof. Dunn has presented. And on that note, I must also our IT guys, please make sure that you sort out this problem. Thank you very much. There are a number of other colleagues when I look around the room that I would continue to acknowledge, because I had quite a long list, So I see you wherever you are seated, Prof. Hoover, Prof. Nkamta, Prof. Molope, Prof. Adundia, and Prof. Ajaguruti, as well as Prof. Marumu. We recognize your presence. But without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I think it is time now to introduce our keynote speaker, and I will start with Prof. Hopton Dunn. Prof. Hopton Dunn is a professor of communications policy and digital media at the University of Botswana and a senior research associate at the University of Johannesburg. He previously served as director of the Caribbean School of Media and Communication at the University of West Indies, where he transformed Caribbean media education and received several research awards, including the University of West Indies Vice Chancellor Awards for Excellence. Dunn also chaired the Broadcasting Commission of Jamaica for 10 years. Since joining the University of Botswana in 2019, he has played a key role in establishing the country's first master's degree in media and communication and is currently leading the development of a new PhD program. Professor Hopton Dunn is a former Secretary General of the International Association for Media and Communication Research, IMCR, making history as the first person from the Global South to hold this position. He currently chairs the panel of judges of the IMCR Stuart Hall Prize, awarded for exceptional research at the IMCR conferences. Professor Hopton Dunn has authored, edited, co-edited 10 books and numerous journal articles. Notably, he was the lead editor for the Palgrave Handbook of Everyday Life, Digital Life, and Reimagining Communication in Africa and the Caribbean, which was published in 2021. His research interests include emerging media, artificial intelligence, digital inclusion, media decolonization, and telecommunications policy. Ladies and gentlemen, outside academia, Professor Dunn enjoys music and sports. Professor Dunn is married to sociologist Dr. Liv Dunn, and their children are active in academia in the UK and in Jamaica. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to call to the podium Professor Dunn to address us, but as he gets ready, I will request a musical item from our wonderful band. Thank you very much.
you. Thank you very much, and much appreciation to the band. Probably we can give them a more rousing appreciation. Director of Ceremonies, Professor Gilbert. Executive Dean, Faculty of Humanities, Prof. Dumi. Deputy Deans, including our good Prof. Chaka, who helped pave the way for my smooth arrival here. Other professors and distinguished friends, ladies and gentlemen, my co-presenter for today, Prof. Falola. I'm delighted, sir, to be in your company, and I am very happy to be here at Northwest University. Not my first time at the podium at this university, only at another campus on another occasion in the past. So I'm very happy to be in Mahikeng, especially since I live and work in Botswana, and therefore I'm just a few hours down the road to my own University of Botswana. But I'm happy to be here, and though I live and work in Botswana for the moment, my home university and my home is Jamaica. So some of you will understand when I say to you, Batagwan. Yeah, man. Yeah, man. Aye. We have globalized our culture from the Caribbean, and I'm happy to know that whether through Rastafari or through reggae music, through the iconic musical performers from our region, we are all at one. We are one people, whether we are from the Caribbean or we are from different parts of Africa. Marcus Garvey, the eminent Pan-Africanist from Jamaica, but a man of the world, says, we are Africans at home and abroad, wherever we happen to be. I'm delighted to share with you today some thoughts on the rise of generative AI and aspects to do with its implications for education, for culture, and so on. I'm going to move a little briskly, and my slides are being flighted by my colleague over here, so I'm going to ask him to help move me along to the next slides as I give him my next indication. So we want to talk a little bit about the techno-social and economic contexts within which we are talking about AI, the geopolitical context, and where do we find ourselves in the global south. I want to talk a little bit about AI literacy, not just digital literacy anymore, and I want to talk a little bit about AI and the risks and challenges and opportunities that may be presented for us in the global south. So we are familiar with artificial intelligence, knowing that it gives machines the ability to model the human brain and learn from pre-existing processes. Computers using these advanced technologies are trained to complete complex tasks by processing vast data sets and recognizing meaningful patterns. What is at the heart of AI, as at so many other digital functions, is data. Data for input, for output, is the heart of AI. And so I pose quite early this important question. What data sources are the systems being trained on? Do they replicate Western biases and global gender disparities that we have become familiar with? Are we going to tread down that same road? Generative AI is a step change in the evolution of artificial intelligence, and the key thing about it is that now we are not only seeing semi-supervised data management through AI, but unsupervised machine learning to train algorithms for specific data-driven tasks. What has happened is that the machine has now learned to learn. We are in the phase of the neural networking, paralleling the human brain with the technology in a kind of cybernetic relationship. And this has given rise to important and legitimate concerns about existential threats that AI could pose in respect to human, especially when we are talking about unlabeled data and unsupervised algorithmic processes. We have seen ChatGPT emerge, and as a startup, it has been followed by many other similar models. We know that Google Bard is now Gemini, widely used, and that AI is not just a product of Western culture or Western society. China has emerged, to the surprise of many, with their own model called DeepSeek version 3, which was released in December 2024, and that is regarded as one of the models of super intelligence in the direction it is going, and will arrive at that notion of super intelligence within less than a decade. It's interesting to me that the logo of the DeepSeek model is a shark and a tagline that says, "Into the unknown." Into the unknown. So, the key challenge, or one of the key challenges of artificial intelligence, friends, is what I call data capture diversity. A lot of the AI companies and operating entities are training their machines on cultures different and away from cultures in the global south. Images from the global south are not adequately represented in the training data. And that will give rise to something that I will talk about a little more later, but which I'm now flagging as data capture diversity challenges. But we have to be balanced and recognize that AI is a two-edged sword. It can enable us to do dramatically more efficient things. It can enhance our ability to process data, especially big data, and to do things differently. If we turn to the McKinsey report of 2023, we know that it is estimated that 2.3 trillion to 4.4 trillion annually will be added to the global economy through AI in areas such as marketing, sales, software, engineering, and many others. Question I pose: Africa and the global south must participate in this boon and benefit from this projected rise in value and in productivity, and not just be victims of the expected adverse impacts on the labor force and also be dependent on just what is coming our way. For some time ago, we became concerned with the fourth industrial revolution. Many of us study the notions of the fourth industrial revolution. The question for me is, are we also forgetting the first industrial revolution? That is the one that industrialized Europe at the expense of colonizing our countries and enslaving our people to enrich their states and their cities in a way that allows them now to be as dominant as they are. So we must not, in looking at the fourth industrial revolution, forget the history, and we must not repeat it. McKinsey speaks about major changes that are going to happen in terms of what AI is able to do. We know that AI is able to do a lot of analytics to assist companies in various ways. And the further up that chart it goes, the more technological the systems become. So we not only are able to do diagnostic and descriptive analytics, but we are also going to be able to do predictive analytics, and we are now actually doing that, finding out through data analysis not only what had happened, but what is going to happen. McKinsey speaks about the content pace at which AI and Gen AI are able to transform businesses, shifting skills in organizations in order to clear the way for changes to take place within these structures. One of the implications likely to be changes in workforce levels. The big concern is whether people will become more and more unemployed, whether, as is predicted, we are talking about the possibility of the elimination of billions of jobs in different parts of the industrialized world, and then on a delayed basis in our respective countries. ILO is speaking that this change in the technology is going to force us to repurpose our jobs and not necessarily just eliminate them. But we must think very carefully about what it is that we are embracing and know what are the consequences for our economy. Now, AI puts us at what I have called the risk of a new colonialism. There's a risk that AI is already replicating global disparities and could generate a new round of dominance, neo-colonial dominance, and subject us to the controls by big data. I cite for us here the work of Sabaz, who argues that if we are not careful, we are going to face the colonial consequences of what the systems are able to do and are already doing in many parts of the world. In the age of AI, it is the big companies and countries that produce and have access to the AI technologies and the big data that are set to rule and to dominate, except we take actions through training and educational institutions such as which is being launched as part of this exercise today. That these entities must allow us to find a place and to participate and not just become spectators. Policy interventions are needed in order to protect and regulate what is happening with AI. I argue that what we need is not just tech fixes. I study and have followed quite closely the emergence of technologies in various waves over the last 2 decades. I know that the consequences are inexorable, and someone is saying in a conversation with me, can't we just fence off ourselves and de-link? And I'm saying that's not such a practical thing, but we can begin to protect ourselves through education, through public policy, through regulation, in a way that will enable us to do better than the spectators or the victims that we are concerned about. AI has been known to provide a challenge for facial recognition in terms of algorithmic bias. We know that in many instances, it is black people and especially women who are not being able to be recognized by this technology, or for which and for whom errors are being made in terms of who they are and what they are in coming up on these AI systems. Those things have implications for when you cross a border. If the technology mistakes you for somebody else, you find yourself ending up in a room somewhere at the back, being interrogated. If the technology mistakes you, you are going to find yourself not getting the job interview that you thought you should be able to get because they thought and are looking at someone else. And if this particular trajectory continues, the faces that come up for the interviews may not be faces such as ours. It's a cautionary note, and it is something that I would like us to take particular careful note about. I want to talk a little bit next about what is called the digital divide and the position we find ourselves in. The continent is lagging and needs to take a faster pace of development in these technologies. There are countries in this continent that are doing very well and moving at a proper pace, especially even in the very basic area of internet access. Because there's no AI without internet access. I've said before that without IA, there is no AI. We have to build up our capacity to handle the digital domain and then build on that into the artificial intelligence area. But again, difficult to get into even internet access if we don't have electricity. That becomes a critical resource for us to use in our development trajectory. But as I said, we have exemplary countries that are moving ahead, especially on the AI front. In Morocco, I'm told, we are talking about a 74% rate of internet access. And in other countries, we are talking about abysmally low levels. Can we, in this era, be looking at countries such as Burundi and Chad and the Central African Republic with internet access levels of 10% and 11%? We have to find a way to lift all boats and to move together as a continent to bring us up to the levels that we are even in this country and in neighboring countries. Within the countries, we also have the digital divide represented by the Internet of Things. The Internet of Things represents those gadgets that are connected to the internet. And now there are more gadgets connected to the internet than there are people connected to the internet. That's what is called the Internet of Things. But the digital divide comes in because more things are connected to the internet in the urban centers than in rural areas. And the rural areas tend to be very, very sparse in respect of that particular access. I move along to talk a little bit about affordability, that one of the challenges that we are not moving as fast is this question of the pricing of access. Of course, our telecoms companies give us nice little bundles and packages that go for 6 minutes here, 3 minutes there, and so on and so forth. But not enough for our children to sit in a serious way and deconstruct algorithms and talk about technology and do their homework in a way that is not rushed and hurried because they can't get access. So that is something which we have to also talk about in respect of policy. Let me turn then to part of what is meant to be a focus of my talk today, which is generative AI, education and culture. I quote from a former US Secretary of State who has made an enduring reflection that still animates us today. Training institutions are expected to educate students for jobs that don't yet exist, using technologies that haven't been invented in order to solve problems we don't even know are problems yet. This is the scenario we face as educators, and we must be constantly innovating and constantly growing our capacity to meet the moment with our creativity and with what it is that we are able to do. Education can benefit in tremendous ways from AI. And there's no way that we are going to fence our students off from AI. In a lot of ways, many of our students in many of our institutions are more adept than their lecturers in the use of many of these technologies, which means that teacher training colleges will now need to place an emphasis on digital training and the capacity to deliver a curriculum using AI and other digital means. But that there is a threat to academic and creative integrity if it is not managed properly. Many educators and artists share the legitimate apprehension that AI, such as ChatGPT, can pose real challenges for creative academic integrity and for the verification of scholarly and academic work. And that is true. I myself face now more and more students handing work in which are dubious in terms of whether it is that they were the ones who actually did it. Students who struggle with English, but who can get by, but who are now submitting assignments that are in the highest and most immaculate form of English. That makes it very obvious that this is not something that they themselves generate. Present it as their own. Other than that, we are talking about a lack of integrity. Just like with the old digital issues of intellectual property, we use Turnitin and other devices to know where the students got these data from and to what extent. We all know that. Nowadays, we also have the technology that will enable us to find out if the student unwisely utilized AI, such as ChatGPT, for the entire essay. And we can find ways of detecting that. And so what we as lecturers can use is something called the AI probability. So we'll get a reading after we process that essay through the system of 50, 30, 40, 20%. That means that it is a percentage of the probability that this particular work was AI written. And our institutions now have a challenge about how to deal with this. What proportion, what percentage is allowable? Under what conditions? What are the sanctions? Or what are the remedial measures in respect of this matter of AI usage? We are in a transition period. We don't expect there to be ready answers to everything, but we must begin to put our minds to what we are doing in respect of this. And it is in that respect I again say that the Center for Teaching Excellence is going to be a heartland of building up for this university key approaches to how we can handle such problems. If we go back to what many of us know as the old Bloom's taxonomy about how learning is kind of pitched and assessed and carried out, we know that initially the former version of Bloom's taxonomy had as at its apex evaluation. The newer, relatively newer version of Bloom's taxonomy has as its apex creating, which means now that our students are not just expected to do book analysis in South Africa and Botswana, while students elsewhere are creating through digital means, creating software, creating films, we need to build that now as a critical part of what we do, and we have the guidance through the revised Bloom's taxonomy in terms of create, evaluate, analyze, apply, understand, and only at the bottom do we have remember, because that's a lower level that we are talking about. So let us move briskly to AI in the music and art areas, where we see another reflection that we need to think about, which is power is changing hands from dying hierarchies to living networks. It's not where you stand in the hierarchy so much anymore in this digital world. It's the networking is more lateral. Somebody can come from no high place and learn the technology and can advance quicker than those who are seeking to get their advancement through primarily by hierarchical means. AI is changing the possibilities of art. As we know, we are primarily concerned with just putting in a prompt and we can get a painting. Putting in a prompt and we can get an essay. Putting in a prompt and we can get a music video. Any of these things are now possible. We can put in a prompt and get a ridiculous image such as Trump behaving like he is a pope with a mitre on his head and so on and so forth. We can get from the sublime to the ridiculous with this AI, especially a part of it that is called deepfake, where we can transfer and transform not only the image but the voice, so that it becomes very difficult even for someone to recognize someone they know very well, but whose avatar and voice is put up, and you wouldn't know that they themselves were not present. So AI is posing challenges, but also opportunities. In the area of media and communication, AI presents occupational opportunities to capture data and to analyze data more quickly, to understand what's happening in large data sets and extract the key meaning. It gives us an opportunity to become further integrated into how information is pulled together, but critically, in respect of media and communication, what we want is data verification. Data verification, because we are committed by ethical rules to provide the public with the truth. And if we're going to do that with the multiple sources from which information is coming, then we have to do data verification. And I recommend that you work quite closely with those who are involved in library and information studies, because that's a sector that is increasingly being equipped now to do that. If you turn to some of the professional competencies that we have to develop in our educational system, you will see that we need entrepreneurship for digital innovators. We need data analysts. We need ethics in science and technology, emotional intelligence and critical thinking, AI content creation and expert messaging. Just some of the things that we now need to teach, and not stick to the old curriculum because it was developed 15 years ago by a guru. It is time that we now renew the curriculum and bring on board some of these things, and in that way, we are going to engage in a more fulsome way, not only the girl child who is often disadvantaged, but also the boy child who is often disinterested. And we must bring the technology to bear on these young minds such that they can engage and help our countries to build and go forward. Let me turn finally to this section called AI technology risks and how we might mitigate them. So as I said before, we are living in a world in which the AI is not only threatening our credibility, our truth, our visual identity, but it is also a threat to humanity itself. Because if the technology can go unsupervised and is learning how to learn and is scraping together its own data, can you imagine that unsupervised application being put to military use, to chemical warfare, to all different kinds of biological threats? It only needs a prompt. Only needs a prompt for some of these things to be either created or unleashed. And so my argument today is that we must build guardrails. We must build guardrails that can level the playing field, but also give us an idea as to what is allowable and what is not allowable with this AI technology. The Europeans have started by establishing the Artificial Intelligence Act of 2023, which is already identifying areas that must be banned and that AI should not be allowed to go down. For example, biometric surveillance. By just passing a wave over you, they know what blood type you are. They know what your iris is like. They know all kinds of things about you. Just a wave across. The Europeans are saying that should not be allowed. Emotional recognition. The technology should not be allowed to go to the point of finding out what you are thinking and exactly how you are feeling, because you must have some human agency and self-will rather than be open and exposed to all of these things. But the way the AI Act in Europe is structured is that it is saying these are the things we think should be allowed in one area. These are the things that should be monitored in one area under strict monitoring, regulation. And then these are the ones that are more allowable and companies can thrive and do different things with. Our gradated method of managing the risks that I'm talking about. In the case of China, so it's not just Europe, they are not yet developing any formal AI legislation, yet for probably obvious reasons. China's AI rules also prohibit open access models that will facilitate public opinion attributes and that can give their population social mobilization capabilities. So you can see that the technology is political. The technology is not just neutral. The technology is political. And if we look at it in that way, we can see that we can't return to this era of the first industrial revolution where we have been victims. We need global regulatory structures of the kind that we developed when we were developing the World Information Society. Some of you who have worked in media for a long time, like I have in media policy, will know about the World WSIS, the World Information Society conferences, where globally everyone was putting their minds to how we control and manage the internet, when the internet was a new thing. Well, AI is a relatively new thing, and we are at another juncture where we need global conferences to help us regulate, not just local, not just regional, but global. We must regulate deepfake. We must regulate it in relation to its relationship to criminality. You know, there are printed guns, artificially printed guns that don't have any metal in there at all. And so if you have one in your pocket, you can cross any number of security devices if it's devised to detect metal. Such are the risks we are talking about when we are talking about this kind of thing. Of course, UNESCO has developed some forms of ethical and artificial intelligence guidelines. We need to build more on that. We need to get new policy and regulations that can make a great deal of difference to how we operate. As I turn to conclude, I say to us, let us adopt AI technologies to meet the opportunities of our time while enacting sensible guardrails for data privacy, for cybersecurity, and for the protection of humanity as a whole. We must balance carefully the two-edged nature of this particular technology. We must allow the advanced technologies to help us to do things better, more efficiently, and so on, but not to threaten humanity itself. And I close with this proactive call for vigilance that says, we must not and must never become the tool of our tools. We must not become or ever become the tool of our tools. Thank you.
Another big round of applause for Prof. Dan. We learned a lot from the professor's lecture. He has alerted us that artificial intelligence is indeed a two-edged sword, because in spite of its usefulness, as he said, it's also a threat to humanity. Thank you very much, Prof. Dan. And I was, watching colleagues, especially when he mentioned that artificial intelligence also has complicated things for academics, especially when coming to academic integrity. So I saw a lot of colleagues starting to listen attentively, because these days it's very, very difficult to see if what you are receiving from a student is indeed the student's actual work, or is something beaten from the internet. So thank you very much for that, Prof. Dan. Also, you have reminded us of the situation in the global south, in particular the digital divide, the issue of the digital divide, which is an ever-present concern in the global south when coming to artificial intelligence and anything to do with technologies, issues of affordability, as well as the risk of new colonialism, as you put it. So the colleagues have learned a lot from your presentation, Prof. Dan, but I'm going to call Prof. Mernanel, who is actually going to facilitate the question and answer session so that colleagues can engage with Prof. Dan's presentation. Prof. Nel, you can take over. Thank you very much, Prof. We are pressed in terms of time. I think you can have about Prof. Chaka? 10 to 15, 10 to 15 minutes, Prof. Thank you. Over to you, Prof.
Thanks, Prof. Gilbert. Thank you very much, Prof. Dan. I don't want to reiterate what Prof. Gilbert has said, but Prof. Dan, we've made it Prof. Dumi's inaugural lecture, and I was already very impressed when you did the response to Prof. Dumi's. But this lecture, as you know, we are embarking on a digital humanities center. We want to put the emphasis on humanities. So thank you very much. I really, really, really enjoyed your presentation, Prof. Dan, and I know that we're going to have a lot of collaboration. So be prepared. Colleagues, so we have 10 to 15 minutes for questions, comments. There's one there. Do we have a, oh, thanks. Thanks to you.
Thanks so much, colleagues. Just one question to my comrade from Botswana, Prof. Dan. I see somewhere that you indicate that in Burundi, there's only 10 or 11% access to the internet. So it's quite shocking. Burundi is right next to Rwanda. Rwanda, which we understand is doing wonders in terms of the uptake, I guess, of technology and economic development generally. Why is it what's happening in Rwanda not rubbing on Burundi? Why such huge gulf between next door neighbors? Another question, really, for the sake of asking, because I'm a visitor here, not to be seen to be coming for food only. There seem to be resistance. What I've observed where I come from, there seem to be resistance on the part of the faculty to embrace AI. What should be done in that respect to try and encourage colleagues to embrace this technology, because its time has come and there's no turning back. At the University of Botswana, for instance, I don't think this AI policy, I guess it's in the making. It's been talked about at least. And there seems to be resistance, quite frankly, on the part of colleagues to embrace this technology.
Thank
And
you.
I usually
Thank you,
say to
colleague.
them that the university is going to come up with a policy, whether you like it or not. Thanks.
Thank you for that question, those two questions. I'll just pick up on that last one first. When things are new, people are required is both repurposing of their training and reassurance that this is not something that need necessarily wipe them out. So I think there's a great deal of need, as I mentioned in my presentation, for, especially in colleges, retraining, reorienting our education towards this direction. And I don't think that that fear that you detect need be permanent. It can't be, because to the extent that someone persists in resisting is the extent that they are making themselves much more easily replaceable. What we need to do is to react flexibly and open ourselves to learning new things. I'm learning new things every day. The second point is what is happening with Burundi in respect of its neighbors and so on. Well, there's a certain part of that central heartland of the continent that is historically slower in their growth and development. We are talking about Burundi, Chad, Central African Republic, and so on. They are talking about GDPs in the 250 to 300, rather than 3,000 or 4,000, right? So basically, their educational system and their technology systems have not taken off enough. We know that there are certain extraordinary leadership measures that are being taken in Rwanda, and that probably accounts for their relative faster pace. But our neighbors need to allow us to lift all boats. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. Dan. There is a question.
Thank you very much, Prof. Hopton. I'm a bit worried. I'm glad that you've mentioned colonialisms and decolonization in as far as the education is concerned. But why does it seem like Africa, we continue to be consumers of Western knowledge, content? Everything that we do, we become reactive, not really proactive. like we are doing now, we waited artificial intelligence from them. Is there anything that Africa is on its own is able to take it to the West? Or we are just continuing with the colonialism, legacy that which we've done? The fact that we have the capabilities, we have everything, but it appears that we are not really up to the core, because whatever that we are doing now is as a creation of a colonialism legacy. The education system as it is, we've learned it, we are just oiling it, but we are not really regularly critiquing it and analyzing it and remodeling it or developing it to meet our Africanness, something that I believe Prof. Falola is going to touch on. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I do believe that Prof. Falola is also well placed to make some remarks on your observation and question. But I also feel that a lot of capacity in the African continent is not being unleashed because of issues of governance, I have to say, because of issues of governance, because of issues of technology management and reform and empowerment. I think that those are the issues. But I can say to you that a child who grows up in Africa or was born in this continent or in Jamaica or in any other global south continent is just as capable of innovating and transforming the world. My own notion that I have popularized in terms of theory is the idea of what I call globalization from within. Globalization from within. Let's do what we must do to innovate in the both way, do it in ways that we know how, and then we globalize it using these technologies. You will find articles of mine written on this question of globalization from within. And I can give you an example of where that has happened in the continent. In Kenya, there is something called M-Pesa, which is a digital wallet. That idea of a digital wallet during the emergence of information technology is something that emerged in this continent, but which has now gone global. They won't credit us for it. In fact, the innovator is being given a very difficult time, and the corporates want to capture the accolades for it. But it's an ordinary, brilliant black African who came up with the notion of a digital wallet. We can do it. We must train our children to do so. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, I don't know if this is a comment or if it is something you might be able to speak on. So I'm coming from a medical anthropological background. So a lot of my concerns, I will admit I am one of the colleagues that is slightly apprehensive, but does not want to get left behind. But one of my major concerns is that a lot of what we do in our curriculum is trying to manipulate some of those neuroplastic processes that exist in the brain to try and promote some kind of cognitive behaviors that we want to see in academics at the end of their qualification. So we're not just trying to teach knowledge, but we're trying to assist students in engaging with new ways of producing knowledge and new ways of thinking about things in the world. And my main fear is that we haven't really dealt with some of the cognitive or psychological ramifications of online access in general. There's a lot of research around how that has quite detrimental impacts on things like our memory, our ability to make connections or make meaningful connections, how we access knowledge, and all those kinds of cognitive processes. And I just have this overwhelming fear that one of the risks of AI that I'm not hearing a lot about is a further, us going further down that pathway of not, how can I say, exercising the muscles that need to be exercised in the brain to allow for that neuroplasticity to continue to develop, so that we have those skills, we have those tools. Yeah.
Perfect. I like how you describe it. Slightly apprehensive, but don't want to be left behind. I think that's that's summarizing most of our feelings about AI. Perfectly summarized there. Thanks.
Yes. I'm in that same position, I must tell you. Apprehensive, but willing to fight for our place in the world. And that's what I believe is part of your mindset that you're trying to have us build. And I think I take it more as an accepted comment than a question. I fully agree with you that we need to develop and reorient our minds in order to do new ways of thinking and of orienting ourselves and so on. It's a process. We are just emerging in a lot of our continent from a period of colonialism. We are not blaming it as the only reason where we are, why we are. It's a primary reason. But at the same time, we must deal with our own selves in terms of our not just learning, but our mental capacity, our outlook. And part of that is willingness to learn the challenges of the new technology. Don't be afraid to get on and try and find out what is going on. And also to build institutions in the continent that is training us at the higher level of this technology. Thank you.
Thank you, colleagues. Can we allow one more question? I see there's one more hand there. Before we have that question, just linking to what you've said, I saw an insert on CNN 2-3 days ago about where they've done research or creating apps which they call AI companionship for young children, especially where children struggle to make friends. And I must say, I'm very apprehensive and very scared of that concept. So yes. Okay, we have time for one more question, and then I see I must wrap up.
Okay, thank you. Mine is very short. In trying to link the two questions or statements that were shared now, my question lies with the idea of technology management and cognitive development. Would you agree, Prof, that the unsupervised, if we have unsupervised AI, the deployment of AI, if it's unsupervised, then that alone carries the potential of us witnessing a lot of academic giants, but management flops?
That's a very interesting way of putting it. And I think the risks are not just the technologies doing things to us, but what we are able to do to ourselves in terms of the misuse of the technology. I edit quite a few journals or sit on the boards of certain journals. And the fear we have now is the inflow of articles. Are we editing AI content, or are we editing human content? And that's part of the challenge. And to my mind, the technology is able to carry out what is known as neural transformations, meaning let it appear as if it's almost human. And we have the concept of cobot, which is the co-working of robots and humans. And sometimes that can be to an advantage, and sometimes it can be to a disadvantage. We also have the concept of cybernetics, in which the technology is now being embedded in people's minds, a chip, so that they can be seen and seeking to do extraordinary things. There's a concept called the singularity, which is the moment in history, which we have not got to yet, when there will be indistinguishable human functions and machine functions. Then we are all in the same boat, right? So we have to struggle for our humanity and also make sure that we are doing everything that is supervised. I end by saying one thing. The mantra that we should be carrying out in everyday technology management is, one, humanity first, and secondly, do no harm. Humanity first and do no harm. Thank you.
Yes, and I think that closed it perfectly. Humanity first, do no harm. That was excellent. Thank you very much, Prof. Dan. Colleagues, thank you very much for those wonderful questions that we had, Prof. Dan, for your insightful and knowledgeable questions. I think, this was quite an experience learning from you, and we are really in awe of what you know and what we can learn from you. So thank you very much again.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Prof. Milner. Thanks, Prof. Milner, and thanks again, Prof. Dan, for that insightful engagement. And you'll be happy to know, I was just informed earlier by Dr. Dilo Sotle that our former Premier, Mr. Bushi Mape, who is keenly interested in artificial intelligence, might have joined us online. So we are happy about that. You will be happy to know that he's amongst, in our midst, although he has joined virtually. So at this point, ladies and gentlemen, I am about to introduce our second keynote address, but I will invite first our band, our most talented band, to give us a musical item.